Greetings, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today, I bring to you the maker of the Mass of the Ages documentary film series about our beloved TLM, Mr. Cameron. Cameron O'Hearn, how are you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I enjoy being on your show so much that maybe we should, get together regularly and call it CNT. What do you think?
Nice.
What do you think about that?
We're both in the Southish, so that would be hip, and it would be perhaps usable enough for country music television to get us some real views for once.
Oh yeah, country music. Oh, CMT. No, C and T, like CNT.
Oh, C and T. I was like CMT. Well, then if people accidentally turn that on, then we'll push these views right into six figures. Yeah, CNT. I like it, man. And it could have been CJ and T.
Jake.
But but Jake isn't here today. So you are one of two filmmakers, Cameron and Jake and Cameron.
Well, there's many of us on our team now. There's more than just me, many more.
Yeah, and one bit of news, semi-recent at least, is Margot of the Ages joined your team.
Yes, of social media fame. Yeah, she's our executive assistant and social media sultan connoisseur. So she organizes things, and she's just a servant. So she comes in and solves problems. Just before this interview, I asked her, hey, can you find a list of bishops that have, reacted in a certain way towards Traditionis Custodes? And she got it in like 2 minutes. So she's excellent.
To be fair, if it's the list of bishops that reacted favorably, then it's a very short list. So, but I'm not saying Margot doesn't do great work.
I disagree with that. It's actually a big list.
Is it? Okay. Do tell. We look, parish orphans and retrogrades today. Cameron is here to do precisely what we're doing now. Some banter, some specific updates, one or two really incisive bits of news from his end of the world and the Latin Mass in general. But do tell, Cameron, how big is that list of pro TLM American bishops?
So we, after Traditionis Custodes, we're all devastated. It was hard not to be discouraged, but we just stood back and let kind of the reality present itself. Let's see what bishops are actually going to do with this new motu proprio. And if you go to traditioniscustodes.info, I don't know who's behind this website, but it catalogs the public responses of bishops towards the TLM. So what are they doing in their dioceses? And like we revealed in our announcement video yesterday, we're going to double Latin Masses, that video. About 70% of bishops have not restricted any Latin Masses. So now we chose our wording carefully. It's not that 70% of dioceses don't have restrictions, because that's not true. That most bishops have been saying, okay, you still need permission to celebrate it, so you can't just have a priest start celebrating Latin Mass willy-nilly. But 70% of dioceses have not suppressed any Latin Masses. And, what I was really surprised by is bishops actually invoking Canon 87, which, for those of you who don't know, here's what Canon 87 says. So you think of Traditionis Custodes, okay, the Pope has spoken, here's a universal decree. Well, here's what Canon 87 says. A diocesan bishop, whenever he judges that it contributes to their spiritual good, is able to dispense the faithful from universal and particular disciplinary laws issued for his territory or his subjects by the supreme authority of the Church. So this is in line with what Vatican II says. In Lumen Gentium, it says, nor are the bishops to be regarded as vicars of the Roman pontiff, for they exercise an authority that is proper to them and are heads of the people whom they govern. So there's this principle of subsidiarity over a bishop and his diocese.
I love it.
Of the bishops in America, we've been able to find so far 10 of them that have invoked Canon 87 and saying, like, status quo, business as usual in my diocese. I can list them, but yeah, there's 10 examples we found so far of of
Can you
bishops
list
actually
those?
doing this.
I'd like to hear who the usual.
Yeah, so these bishops have invoked Canon 87 in their official response. That doesn't mean that they are dispensing the faithful from every one of these, restrictions, but they have invoked the canon to dispense from one or all of them. So it's Bishop Vasquez of Austin, Bishop Kinnaman of Biloxi, Bishop Mulvey of Corpus Christi, Bishop Aquila of Denver, Bishop Provost of Lake Charles, Bishop Perez of Philadelphia, Bishop Sis of San Angelo, Bishop Vasa of Santa Rosa, Bishop Paprocki of Springfield, Bishop Kem of Wichita. Yeah, and that's 10.
Oh,
I've
so
specifically mentioned Canon 87.
Not Strickland. I'm surprised.
Well, Strickland has, to our knowledge, he hasn't mentioned Canon 87. These are just, Bishop Strickland is of the Green Dioceses, where he's not restricting any Latin masses, but these 10 bishops have specifically invoked Canon 87.
You guys figure if you called them the Green Dioceses, Pope Francis might look favorably on them and leave them alone or something. The funny thing is, Biloxi is where we sometimes go. We have two Latin masses that are almost equidistant to us. And the one is St. Pat's in New Orleans, which we consider our home parish. And the other one is in Bay St. Louis, which is under that bishop. So I did not know that we don't actually have to cross state lines when we stay in Mississippi when we go to that particular Latin mass. So that's good to hear. Look, man, a couple things. First off, because you got a lot today, and I want to let you get it all out. First off, we are going to be hit with national news making inclement weather here. So if as Jake says, if a tornado hits me in the middle of this video, you just go right on. You keep on keeping on, and I will put on a brave face, and I'll try to fight off the tornado.
That would make great TV.
It would be a hell of a scene here.
Yeah, please don't cut the feed if that happens, because that would get you a lot of views. For sure.
That would, and I'm trying not to. I would probably turn the camera around and become a storm chaser. Right.
Shows your guys like in his truck following a tornado. What's the entire theme of the show?
And then do that from then on. Probably not, but I might do that for as a one-time kind of deal. But if the feed gets lost, it's not, me storming off set after 27 minutes of filming, like so and so did yesterday. Like Kanye. Look, what we learned from yesterday. Speaking of everyone put on a brave face, with Milo, Fuentes, and Ye going on Tim Pool's show, what we learned is it's a lesson I'm hard of learning. Like some people are hard of hearing. It's don't do studio banter before you turn on the camera, because people, one, like to see that. Two, you get your best stuff the first time. The second performance always feels put on. So if you talk about lots of great stuff, the way polite people do when they see each other. I haven't seen Cameron since I was out in Virginia. A lot of times it feels rehashed. And also, if someone storms out of the studio or whatever because a delicate topic gets brought up, then you miss all of what you could have gotten before. Tim Pool said he had 90 minutes or so of 75 minutes of great content beforehand. Me and Cameron were just making jokes about cortados.
But the jokes were so good that if we tried to tell them now, they would fall short for sure.
They would sound like dumb coffee jokes at this point. That's not what they were at the beginning. But it is a family program, so it's probably better that we kept the cortado jokes to a minimum. It's just a coffee joke, people. Anyway, so what we want to talk about today is everything related to the Latin Mass, everything related to Mass of the Ages specifically. Not the least of which is the third film in the series, which I'm excited about because, well, I'm in it. I'm excited about 1 and 2 as well. But you guys also have a newer project that seems to be occupying a lot of your space. You let something drop yesterday, and I want you to talk about that in just a second. Last thing I have to get out there by way of housekeeping is, people, you've been waiting for the bibliography of Case for Patriarchy, Ask Your Husband. because a lot of you want to skip buying the books and get the straight dope. Well, it's now on timothyjgordon.com. Tons of people have downloaded the free PDF. We're calling it Catholicism versus Feminism, just the sources. You can go download that free PDF. We're trying to make more and more stuff free to you all. If you want to make a small donation while you're there, it's strictly donative and it's unrelated to you downloading this PDF. But go get just the sources, Catholicism versus Feminism, right now on timothyjgordon.com. Okay, Cameron, tell us what this video that dropped yesterday was all about, my friend.
We boldly announced that we're going to double Latin masses. And that might sound naive to some people. We believe it's going to be the case, and it's not going to be a short-term fix. It's going to be a long-term strategy, kind of a roadmap. After episode 2 came out, we took some time just to consider what the Lord might be doing with this movement, not just Mass of the Ages, but the traditional Latin Mass movement. And something shocking we discovered was that only 2% of practicing Catholics are attending a Latin Mass. So this is, it might even be less. We give 2% as kind of a generous estimate. And this is of practicing Catholics. So the ones who are going to Mass, week after week, only 2% go to Latin Mass. Okay, so how do we reach the 98%? And yeah. I think what we're doing really well is marketing versus branding. So I want to explain the difference between marketing and branding. Marketing is like the features. It's like we have a lot of books and a lot of articles and a lot of videos that explain features about the Latin Mass. And we talk about the stuff of the Latin Mass very well. And you can find great books on it. And these books and articles speak to the 2%. They speak to the people who are already in the doors attending Latin Mass. The 98% who aren't stepping foot inside a Latin Mass and experiencing the beauty in front of them, their perception of the Latin Mass is the branding, is the feeling they get about it, the perception, the brand perception on the outside. The perception of the Latin Mass is very negative. It's a big problem. It's what we're not doing very well. Arguably, it's the bad negative perception of the Latin Mass that led to Traditionis Custodes. There's people who make this case that it's a minority of people online who give a bad name for traditional Catholics. And Pope Francis says regarding the perception of the Latin Mass, those who adhere to the 1962 Missal, this is in the letter attached to Traditionis Custodes. He says they're too often characterized by a rejection of Vatican II. And they set up a true church, like we're the true church. Our investigations with episode 3, the conversations we've had with Diane Montagna and others, have shown that this is not actually the evidence on the ground, that most traditional Catholics are not rejecting Vatican II. They're not trying to set up a parallel church. They just love the traditional liturgy, and that's why they attend it. So yes. The problem is a brand perception. So
according to this narrative, I don't buy that narrative. Do you buy that narrative that Francis would have left us alone? But if only there weren't so many, there are a lot of weirdos online, but that's in all niches. That's not, the Latin Mass would be picked on, I believe, by Francis, even without some online weirdos. The people that you meet at Latin Mass are good people.
Well, even if that is true, the bishops also have a perception about the Latin Mass.
That's true. Yeah.
And the perception is largely negative. The Latin Mass is seen as something that's filled with angry people who are resisting something versus joyful people who just have a zeal for the liturgy. You can do a test by just go onto YouTube and search like Latin Mass news or Latin Mass Pope Francis or something. And you'll find like thumbnails with ridiculous poses of Pope Francis, like angry faces or whatever. And then a traditional Catholic, like in the corner, angry, and he's in the shadows. This is the perception most people have about the Latin Mass, and we need to change this perception. You know, no one's going to go to the Latin Mass if the perception is come to the Latin Mass and be angry with us.
It's fun though. I mean, but I mean, to be fair, Francis always looks like that. To be fair, he always looks pretty angry.
Type in Pope Francis funny or Pope Francis laughing, or there's some jovial pictures of him.
I'm doing it right now while you talk.
But we need to change this brand perception, because right now the battleground is with bishops in their dioceses, because Pope Francis has put the power back in their hands. We need to win them over so that, yes, 70% of them have not restricted any Latin Masses. We want that 70% to not only not restrict the Latin Mass, but to promote and protect the Latin Mass in their dioceses. We want more than just 10 bishops invoking Canon 87.
Yeah.
We want them to see the Latin Mass not as a resistant, angry thing, but as, like episode 1 of Mass the Ages showed, it's a solid foundation of faith for families who are hurting, for families who are, striving to live out the Catholic faith. What bishop would want to take away this solid foundation of faith for this widow and these orphans? Some would. Yeah, there are few who would still.
Yeah, can we talk about that a little? I think it would still be a large swath of bishops who would want to take it away if they understood the proper stakes, the recto ratio involved by the stakes of Latin Mass versus the Novus Ordo. And I did the debate pro on your channel, Cameron, with Tim Flanders, saying like, look, this is I think even an evil kind of act of bullying, but I don't think it's ultra vires to the Pope to control disciplines like this. I just think I think an evil Pope would bully us like this. And so I'm the guy that's saying this isn't necessarily ultra vires, but at the same time, I think the Pope and a bunch of the bishops resent the Latin Mass for what it actually is. The Lex Orandi. I'm not saying the Novus Ordo ain't the Lex Orandi, but the beautiful old traditional Lex Orandi that really gets people on fire for the faith. So I think there are enough bad bishops in place that not all of their antipathy toward us Latin Mass people can be reduced to some misunderstanding. I think a lot of it can be reduced to a proper understanding of what the Latin Mass really is. What do you say?
Well, if that's the case, then when Pope Francis gave them the power and told them that the Latin Mass is a source of division, why did only 10% of them restrict the Latin Mass in their dioceses? I think the reason...
That's a good point. The
reason for that is because the bad bishops are politicians. They don't want to be perceived a certain way. So if they're told, and the perception is the Latin Mass is a bad thing and you're a hero for restricting it, then they will want to restrict it. If they're told, I'm talking about the bad bishops who are just politicians, if they're told that the Latin Mass is a beautiful thing, there's a lot of faithful Catholics who give you a lot of money in their collection baskets, who find a lot of spiritual fruit from the Latin Mass, and the world sees that the Latin Mass is a good thing. If that perception starts to change, even the bad bishops, the ones who are politicians, will not want to take that away, because the perception would be you're an enemy of the good. And so the state on the ground right now is that I don't think the Latin Mass has a good brand perception. So that's kind of the long-term, we're building something for not just tomorrow or next year, but for our children's future. We need to change the perception around the Latin Mass from something negative and angry to something positive and life-giving.
Angry isn't negative, though. I mean, like, this is where
I agree, but anger needs to be purified, purified into zeal, like a virtue. Anger is just a passion; it's just an emotion, but it's also not an attractive emotion.
I think it's very attractive. I mean, okay. I ain't trying to debate you, but St. Augustine, man, he says, hope has two glorious daughters, courage and anger. Anger is really, I've always found anger attractive. Maybe I'm just disordered.
Maybe, okay, so an anger, so you could call it a righteous anger. An anger for a just cause, an anger for a good is attractive. But if you pair anger with other things like unhappiness, like we all know people who are just angry and unhappy, well, that's not attractive. I don't even care. Like, even if they're angry about something good, but they're always unhappy, like, why would I want the Kool-Aid they're drinking if it just makes them unhappy all the time?
Well, anger paired with bad, ill-fitting suits with dandruff on them, which sometimes I see at the Latin Mass. You know, guys will be like, Tim, you're always so dressed down. Wear a suit. I was like, well, I don't wear a suit that many times per year, but when I do, it looks good. Like, I can't say that for everyone. So angry with like dandruff suit, you know, that's I get what you're saying. And I get it a lot because I live online in the TLM community. So I'm with you. I just think, and I think that's a really strong point you made, because obviously you've crunched these numbers. That's really compelling to say, well, if as many of the bishops are ideologically averse, meaning idea fisse, by way of a kind of animating principle to the Latin Mass, rather than just being these corrupt, fruity politicians, then why did only 1 in 10 of them take the adverse action that they did? So that's compelling. You flipped me right there.
Awesome. And then are you going to order a cortado next time you're at a coffee shop, probably?
You know, after we talked about cortados, said people like, what are these guys talking about? I remembered I had one once at some was it at PJ's or something? I don't know if they call it a cortado, but it's a double, or you ordered a double and the double was really 4 times the amount of caffeine. That makes no sense.
I'm confused. So, cortado is just espresso with milk. It's just really
it just means
good.
Short. It means short.
Well, yeah, I'm a quarter of an inch underneath the average male height, so I can drink cortados, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I wasn't saying that all of the consumers of cortados, Cameron, are cortado or cortati. But I was just saying that's literally all the drink means. So it must mean short and stout. It's short, but it packs power.
Oh yeah, okay. I would describe myself in that way. Thanks, appreciate that.
But I don't understand what else you said about the drink is you ordered a double and you wound up with 4 times the caffeine. Hopefully,
yeah, I think there's 2 shots in a single. I don't know.
Okay, well,
people are really interested in this, though.
This is important stuff. This is cutting edge. Rules for retrogrades. This is what we do. I will tell you that if you promise, as you have pledged, to double the Latin Mass attendance and instead you quadruple it, no one's going to complain.
That's right. By doubling Latin Masses, we mean quadrupling.
Of course. What did you think we meant? Right. Well, so yeah, the video that you released yesterday makes bold claims. Yeah. Short, stout, cortado styled claims. And I like it. How do you plan to achieve this lofty goal?
So we are building what we're calling the front porch of the Latin Mass, which is a platform that people will go to if they have any questions. You know, it's the next step or the first step for anyone interested in the Latin Mass. That's why we purchased latinmass.com. So in the future, when anyone's interested in anything to do with the Latin Mass, they go here. And this platform has kind of a short-term solution and a long-term solution. So we talked about branding a little bit, you know. Yeah. So the last word I'll say on branding is like the more beautiful, winsome content we can push out there over the long term, the more we're going to change the brand perception. But then there's the short term. So right now, Latin Masses are rare and hard to find. So in the dioceses, so we're talking about just the green dioceses right now. We're not here to say, you know, disobey your bishop or go against the Pope or anything like that. We're just saying, okay, let's consider these green dioceses. And let's consider these dioceses that have invoked Canon 87, which in some of these dioceses, like a priest can learn the Latin Mass and celebrate it, even publicly. According to our research, if someone, you know, I'm not a canon lawyer, we're going to interview Father Gerald Murray tomorrow, who is a canon lawyer. So
yeah, Father Jerry. Yeah.
Oh, Jerry, is it? Oh,
Well, that's what Raymond Arroyo calls him all these years.
Oh, okay.
He calls him
I
Father John.
I'm just using his proper name, I guess.
Yeah, you were going like Geraldo. Yeah, I think you could call him Father Jerry.
So, anyways, we can just look at the dioceses that are positive or neutral towards the Latin Mass, or dioceses that have invoked Canon 87, and say, okay, what if we trained priests in these dioceses to offer the Latin Mass? So, in the example in our video, we said, okay, just considering the green dioceses, if we got one priest out of 20, 1 out of 20 in these dioceses to offer Latin Mass, then in America they would double. So that seems very reasonable to me, that if we can train 1 out of 20 to celebrate Latin Mass, then Latin Masses would double. Now, how do you get them? How do you get a priest to be trained to learn it? Well, the first step is actually the branding, is actually like unpacking the richness of the Latin Mass. I think when priests see our Latin Mass training we're developing, they're going to be moved. The good priests, like the younger, priests, they're going to be moved to want to celebrate the Latin Mass. There's so much richness in the rubrics. Like one example is, why does the priest have his eyes downcast when he's processing or like at the altar? Why doesn't he look at you? And the reason for that is that when you think of a procession, there's 2 main processions in the Bible. There's the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, where the king comes to Jerusalem, Hosanna, Hosanna, but he's coming to be crucified. And the other procession is when he's carrying his cross. So he is the suffering servant. So the processions in the Mass aren't a time to see the face of Father Bob and to greet each other and that kind of thing. The reason for a procession is to remind us of the suffering servant who is our king, coming to lay down his life for his church. There's so many little details like that we're unpacking in our priest training that I think is going to first inspire a priest to want to learn it. We're also there are priest trainings out there, but they're really unwieldy. They're overly cerebral. They're not easy to follow. They don't really take you step by step. Well, they do take you step by step, but it's very heavy the way it's done. We're going to make it easy, step by step. So we believe with our training, a priest will want to learn the Latin Mass and can easily be trained to offer it. And so I think it's reasonable that 1 out of 20 priests in these green dioceses will want to learn the Latin Mass and can go through our training and learn it. And then that's in America. America has a lot of Latin Masses, but consider a country that only has 1 or a few. Well, to double Latin Masses isn't actually that big of a feat. And this isn't going to be overnight. This is going to be a slow process. But I will say, these resources on our website, the short-term solution with these trainings and resources, making it easier than ever to build Latin Mass communities, these will be available within the coming months. So this is something we're producing right now and pushing out very soon.
That's excellent. I mean, that's genuinely exciting stuff. Would you clarify something for me, Cameron?
Yep.
In the green dioceses, where there's been no perturbance or molestation of the ability by the bishop of priests to say the Latin Mass, not necessarily those that have invoked Canon 87.
Mm-hmm.
I thought those ones, unless they're invoking 87, I thought they were disallowed from training new young priests from saying the Latin Mass or opening up any new Latin Mass public time. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. So there's 2 different issues, and we've talked to canon lawyers about this, trying to get things sorted. And I'm not an expert in it, but basically, we're not even talking about new priests. So let's set that aside. So yes, right now, Traditionis Custodes says a new priest needs authorization from the Vatican. Now, some canon lawyers will say, well, it says elsewhere in Traditionis Custodes and elsewhere in church teaching that the bishop, I'll read the quote right here. It's from Traditionis Custodes. Well, maybe I can't find it, but basically, that the bishop is the legislator, he allows or disallows the 1962 missal in his diocese. I forget the exact wording. But then elsewhere in Traditionis Custodes says a new priest needs permission. So what happens if the bishop gives him permission and because he's the authority of his diocese contradicts what the Holy See has said? That there's confusing theories there, and canon lawyers disagree on that. So let's just put that aside. The other issue you mentioned was we're talking about the priests who are ordained before Traditionis Custodes with our 1 out of 20 number. So in dioceses that haven't invoked Canon 87, you're right to say that they cannot start no new groups. Now, I don't really know what new groups means. There still needs to be more clarifications around, can a priest celebrate the Latin Mass in some of these dioceses? It really depends on the bishop. It depends on the bishop and permissions from the bishop. But this is where our work is cut out for us. So we know that 70% of bishops are positive or neutral to the Latin Mass. Most of these bishops have not invoked Canon 87. So we need to re-educate and encourage bishops that, Canon 87 exists. Maybe they don't know that exists. Right. And that their brother bishops are on the same wavelength as them, that most of them are positive towards the Latin Mass. That Vatican II teaches you're not the vicar of the Roman pontiff. And this part, convincing these bishops, again, it's not going to happen overnight, probably not even in a year, but within a decade, or maybe for our children's generation, that I think we can move hearts of bishops. And episode 3 is geared towards this. That's our goal with episode 3, is to move the hearts of bishops to protect the Latin Mass in their dioceses.
What a noble goal. Truly. That's I think excellent for all of us to hear. Can I just say?
Appreciate that.
And I can see, I don't know how much you want me to say, but I can see, knowing the little part I had to play in 3, assuming any of my parts make it in, how that would pollinate such a noble venture, in its humble way, to actually turn around the hearts and the minds of the bishops, who are really the ones making the decisions.
I think episode 3 is going to be a watershed moment for Catholics, similar to episode 2. After episode 2 came out, you notice that traditional Catholics have a new lexicon for how they speak about the reforms of the liturgy, Vatican II, the concilium. Episode 3 is going to be similar, where we can no longer assume that the 62 Missal is characterized by a rejection of Vatican II. That's just not borne out by the evidence. Right. You've done a great job with your shows, really influential on trads can accept Vatican II on the basis of the documents themselves. And I think most traditional Catholics, we're doing a worldwide survey, we're developing that now, but we're right. going to find that most traditional Catholics are not rejecting Vatican II. Once they understand what that means, that Vatican II is, what do you say about the documents of Vatican II? Now, they might reject like the event or the intentions or the implementation or whatever, but they do not reject the documents of Vatican II. Most of them. Some of them do, sure. A small minority would, but yeah, it's gonna be a watershed moment for.
Was it on the debate I did with Tim on Mass of the Ages YouTube channel, where I think I might have first rolled out the notion that traditional Catholics are running into sticking points with Vatican I as much or more as Vatican II. And this was really clear. I've been saying that privately before Traditionis Custodes came out, but I think I might have said it publicly for the first time on that debate. Like, again, I'm not saying that Catholics can or should reject Vatican I or Vatican II, because a Catholic can't reject and therefore shouldn't reject Vatican I or II. But with one, it's in some sense, I'm not trying to change the whole trajectory about what we're talking about, but one is somewhat more understandable that there's vagary. I think there's vagary from one that was not weaponized. Vagary resulted because it was an 18-month or less council because the Franco-Prussian War broke out. And you have some big sweeping claims about the pontificate and what the pontificate, its purview. And then I think a lot of the documents are fine from Vatican II, which is what's ratified in the Constitution, or as the text that appears under its four corners, and those are all fine from Vatican II. But really, I do think the ambiguity there is weaponized. Do you agree that Vatican I has sort of come under the we have to look back to Vatican I as well? I think at some later council, there's clarification that's needed from Vaticans I and II.
Yeah, it reminds me of the principles of storytelling, where you have the setup, the upset, and the reset. So Vatican I kind of set up what problems we were going to see with hyperpapalism. Yeah. Vatican II kind of upset the balance, and then we need a Vatican III, or whatever you want to call it, Trent II or whatever, to reset things, to clarify things. So I agree with that. And one of the consequences I've seen from Vatican I particularly is this idea that any of the Pope's intentions or anything the Pope believes must be my intentions or what I believe. So what's your opinion on the Latin Mass? Well, what does the Pope think about it? And I need to be in union with the Pope no matter what he says. And in one of the dubia for the Traditionis Custodes was about advertising the Latin Mass in the bulletin. It's like, well, the Pope doesn't want us to advertise the Latin Mass in our bulletin, therefore we shouldn't advertise the Latin Mass in our bulletin. Like this, to my knowledge, in the history of the Church, we haven't seen this kind of overzealous micromanagement of the papal office into the parish level. So
unbelievable micromanagement, as Michael Scott calls it. Didn't he actually put that?
What is another word for kind of a micro form of management? And then Jim says micromanagement. Boom.
Touche. I was just gonna say micromanagement before you said micromanagement, and then I was like, it would have been funnier to make reference to it without making. Wasn't that actually in Traditionis Custodes though? I haven't looked at this. The bulletin point. That is mean. That was
in the responsa dubia.
Oh, that was in the response. By the way, that responsa that he issued to the dubia came within like 2 weeks, as Cardinal Burke is growing old and gray. I mean, I think he was already relatively old and gray when he issued his dubia together with Walter Brandmiller. But two of the dubia cardinals have expired. They've gone hopefully up to heaven, waiting for a response to their dubium, which is now 5 years old. And I think, didn't Francis respond to those Traditionis Custodes dubia like within 2 weeks?
I don't know if it was 2 weeks. It was definitely very quickly to imply that this wasn't, the way I see it was, and we can speculate like whatever, take this or leave it, but a lot of the canon lawyers we've spoken to have shown us that Traditionis Custodes is not a precise document.
No,
it needs to be interpreted in the strictest possible sense. When it says a thing, that's what it means. I think the responsa ad dubium, or whatever it's called, was a little bit of like, we need to say the things we should have said in the document, and it was a little bit of like, let's make a dubia so we can respond to it. I think it was that sort of thing, because it did come out very quickly.
You mind if I ask you a question in regard to Mass of the Ages 2, Cameron? Yeah. So you garnered some pushback that I think I pushed back against the pushback on your behalf from that excellent sequence, which showed all of the changes that were made, the really, really subversive revolutionary changes that were in fact made to the missal. And when you went from the 62 to the 70, would you care to just, I think I took my best crack at it, but would you care to defend that portion of Mass of the Ages too, that really made such big waves in the Catholic
What
world?
was the criticism regarding that scene?
Well, I can't remember who issued it, but it was a relatively mainstream criticism that you guys had, and I'm in defense of you, so this isn't a gotcha question. I don't think you exaggerated one iota, but that you'd exaggerated the, some of the facts or misrepresented some of the facts that really lent to the portrayal of the 62 to 70 changes being as revolutionary as they were, and they were revolutionary. But I don't know. I thought you would.
The only
I thought
criticism that comes to mind in that regard would be the quoting of Bunini, or the misquoting of Bunini, which when you put Bunini's quote about we must remove everything that could even remotely be a stumbling block in context of the missal being crossed out, people thought that was misleading because in context, Bunini was talking about the Triduum prayers, the prayers, I think it's on Good Friday. Anyways, but I mean, the crossing out of the missal, that was all triple checked, and every one of those things added or taken out is 100% accurate. So there's really no criticism. We're just showing line by line what happened. With the Bunini quote, that was just you can say it's out of context, but it's even in context, it's damning. To the sense of we get a window into Bunini's intentions, which is everything, whether it's a prayer or in the liturgy, should bend to ecumenism.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem when you're talking about the source and summit of the Catholic life, like our liturgical life. So it's out of context in as much as anything we say is out of context, because you need, like whenever you quote scripture, it's in one sense out of context unless you read the entirety of it. But I don't think it's out of context to be misleading. I think it's accurate, even though it is slightly out of context. And yeah, you take some liberties with the phrasing of it because the way he phrased it was kind of confusing. So we're kind of trying to clarify it so people understand. But we put all the references there. You can go look up any of those yourself. I mean, we burned them into the video. Like normally, even making a documentary, people wouldn't put their references on the actual video when you're playing it. You'd have to look them up later. So yeah, do your own research. I think people in argumentation, especially around something they find precious, like the liturgy, if their preconceived notions are challenged, they will look for the weakest point and attack the weakest point. They think of it as like a link of chains where you take down the weakest chain and everything falls apart. It's more like I've heard it described as a cumulative case, or like a chain link of armor. Like if you take one chain off of a link of armor, you're not destroying the rest of it. You can take one link off and the rest still stands.
Of course.
So people need to address the not any individual change, but the extent of the changes, the perfect storm of changes that happened. And when you see it all laid out with the orations being crossed out, removed, the readings being excised, and the changes to the missal, that's what people are shocked by, is the extent of the changes.
Can there have been, this is overarching now, can there have been good intent? I'm not an intentionalist, right? I'm a textualist. That's the whole basis by which I say, look, the Vatican II documents are fine, because I'm not a Stanley Fish intentionalist. I'm a Antonin Scalia textualist. But I don't think if I were to be an intentionalist, I would be with everyone else. It's like, this is all bad. I don't think there's a possible, reasonable, good intent behind those kinds of changes that you outlined in Mass of the Ages too. I honestly don't. That doesn't mean that it's illicit change, though. What do you think?
So you don't think there's good intentions behind any of the changes that happened?
Well, any is such a big word for three letters. I just mean go to the Novus Ordo listen to the mass that's being played, because you might never go. I wind up a lot of weeks at my local Novus Ordo. It's so obnoxious, and I get so angry that I'm just like, this is evil. This is evil, and it doesn't mean it's illicit, but it's evil. It's one of these things we're struggling with. How can something, I don't know. I thought you'd pick up on that, but
well, I wouldn't say that the Novus Ordo is evil. I think the
intent behind it. The intent behind, and the songs are evil.
I think some intentions behind it were malicious, for sure.
Yeah.
The way I think about the Novus Ordo is not like a robber who comes to your house and steals all your things, because you can go to the Novus Ordo and get a lot of fruit from it. Some of my most transformative experiences at Mass were at a Novus Ordo. The problem is that it's kind of like a bad security system that lets the robber in. It's like so much has been removed from it that it doesn't have the rubrical and reverential protections built into the ritual. So like we had a really good security system against irreverence, against disbelief in the real presence, that have been removed. The strong Catholicity that was built into our liturgy has been removed. So it's kind of like a bad security system that lets the robber into your house instead of a robber that comes to your house and actively attacks you.
I think it's more like a robber that breaks into your garage and steals your Lamborghini and leaves behind his Yugo. So he's like, hey, I just traded you out. What do you think? Yeah.
A Yugo? Is that a car?
Yeah, it's an old crappy car. Yeah.
See, your analogy needs to be more universal. I have no idea what you're talking about.
How old are you, man? I thought no, you're younger than me. I'm
at least 33.
See, they don't really make America, because I mean, like in the 80s, that was still a time when American craftsmanship was suffering from the melees of the Jimmy Carter era. I wasn't born in that. I was born, I'm a Reagan baby. But that they don't really make super crappy cars anymore. You look around on the road and all the cars are kind of nice. I sort of miss crappy cars. Don't you? You know what I mean? Steph, you were saying this the other day. You look around and everyone's got a pretty nice vehicle.
My first car was like the car Uncle Buck drives in the movie Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
And I loved that car.
It was the Beast Lord. Yeah, the Beast Lord. You had like an old Oldsmobile. I met Steph when she was 18. I never
had an Oldsmobile.
Did you? See, that's what I mean. Crappy cars.
A 94 Oldsmobile. Loved it.
That's
why
like
you have driving a living room around.
So that's precisely what a robber would break into your garage and steal your Lamborghini and leave behind. That's the Novus Ordo. It's your crappy Cutlass. What's it called? The Oldsmobile Cutlass.
All right, let me build on your analogy. The Novus Ordo is a robber who breaks into your home, but he doesn't destroy anything. So I'm not being that extreme. All he does is replace your furniture with a bunch of beige furniture. He like paints your walls beige
from IKEA. Yeah.
He takes away like all the art.
Yeah.
And you can, it's still your house.
Yeah.
You can still like have fun in your house, I guess, or the analogy breaks down. I think at some point.
I want this analogy to work. It's becoming central to this channel over the last 30 seconds that this analogy is made to work. Well, yeah, no, I think that, what do you think of people? I've meant to ask you this before, Cameron. What do you think of all the Eastern Rite Catholics that are like, they flee to the Eastern Rite and then they're like, what are all you Western Rite Catholics bitching about with the Novus Ordo? It's like, well, bro, like we're kind of Western, you know, and we're kind of stuck with this. I'm not some right hopper guy. I'm not a hopper guy. There are a lot of hoppers around who hop from this to that. I'm here. I'm clear. I don't want any more bears in the Novus Ordo. I just another Simpsons reference. I changed a word though. I don't know. What do you think of those guys? Because it's like, I mean, the Eastern Rites.
Here's where the analogy finally works. So
yes,
the Eastern Rite Catholic wants you to leave your house because it has new furniture in it. You're like, this is my home. Like
Right.
I am a Western Catholic. I am a Roman Rite Catholic. So I want to buy new furniture, and because I love my house and my home. This is where I have my memories.
No, I want to refurbish my old furniture because of all that stuff you said, right?
Yep, my IKEA furniture. Yeah.
Well, the IKEA furniture that thief named Bunini that he didn't break in. I accidentally left my garage unlocked. Walked in and he replaced all the furniture, and it was an act under the auspices of lyceity.
Yeah,
So,
because he brought a bunch of priests with him to build the IKEA furniture.
yep, and they blessed
They
it.
can build furniture however they want.
This isn't even an analogy anymore. This is exactly what happened.
Eventually, we're going to explain exactly what happened.
So this is just all I can say, man, is God bless you guys. You're doing great work, and I think it's the perfect set of films for the time. What you've done with 1 and 2, which of those has been more viewed, by the way? 1,
2.
2. How
Yep.
many times has 2 been viewed?
1.4 million, or close to 1.5.
Great. How about 1?
1.2.
Okay, nice. Yeah, two is the
Splashier.
gut punch. Yeah, it's flashier. Yeah. Well, great work. Did you have anything else you wanted to get out there? Because
I think the traditional Catholic, how would I say, like the temptation maybe for a traditional Catholic is not towards naivete. It's towards pessimism and even despair. It's leaning into kind of a hopeless position. And I want to say that if you believe, this is what I want to say to people to kind of wrap up. If you believe that God is behind the Latin Mass movement, well, do you believe that God is behind the Latin Mass movement? I definitely do. Then he is going to restore the liturgy, whether it's the 1962 Missal or a more refined version of the 62 Missal. He's going to be the one ultimately to restore it.
Yep.
It's easy for God to turn the ship around. He can do it. He can give Pope Francis a vision tonight. But with a snap of his fingers, it would be easy for God to convert hearts, to move bishops' hearts. But God tends to use people like us in his mission. So if you believe that God is behind the Latin Mass movement, he's going to restore the liturgy, then don't lose hope, because yes, we might have to suffer for a time. It might even get harder, but at the end of the day, maybe for our children, the traditional liturgy will be fully restored in the future.
Beautiful. I say this all the time, by the way. I'm like, I don't think the Novus Ordo is going to survive the 21st century. And people are like, oh, have you seen all the papabile? And it's just, how can you say that? I'm like, I'm not saying I can map out the path like a campaign manager. I don't know. I just believe in what you just said thoroughly. And that's because I believe God's in charge of the Latin Mass movement, because I believe it's better. It's the first principle of practical reason, right? Do the good, avoid evil. And so I think you're exactly right. So this I think would help people not to be so dour. And also, folks, not everyone out there needs it, but use Head and Shoulders. It takes care of that dandruff on the suit. The suit is where the dandruff shows up sometimes. And it does no good to be snotty about people wearing hoodies when your own suit.
Yeah, be nice. My goodness.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Cameron, for coming on. Thank you for these films. And I'm excited for 3. When can we expect 3 to make its debut?
We released a video. I forget what it's called, but it's like an hour long. I just answer a bunch of questions. You can find it in the description of our most recent video. It's an update on episode 3. You can get but the gist is we don't have a release date yet. The stories that we're following are still unfolding, but that doesn't mean we're not working on it. We're editing it right now, putting the pieces together, but a documentary is an evolving thing. So just be patient. We're not going to release something that's just a B+. We're going to release something that's excellent, and it's going to send shockwaves around the world.
That's titillating, but also confusing. How about 2023? Can we expect it? The people
Likely, yeah.
Likely. Okay. Well, they're titillated and
I mean, I wish I had a release date for myself to get excited about. Like, I don't know if there's anyone in the world who wants it out sooner than I want it out. But to say a release date and then we get 2 months to that release date and something big happens in the church, we want to be able to cover it. So, but we're hard at work on it, putting the pieces together. It'll be out when it's ready.
Last question. Synod on Synodality. They're responding to us Latin Mass people is one of the 4 stated goals. Does that worry you? Is this one of the news items you're kind of watching the skies for?
Yeah, to be honest, I do have a lot of concerns. I too struggle with, kind of a hopeless tendency, like pessimism. In the end, I mean, when I look beyond that, I have pure hope. God's going to vindicate his church. But yeah, I certainly have worries about it. If the narrative can be controlled by the Synod of Synodality people and their social media channels and the Pope's statements on it, then yeah, maybe they'll win with the narrative. But we want to take back control of the narrative. We want to show the true face of the traditional Catholic movement, and that's what we've done with 1 and 2, and we're going to continue to do with 3 and latinmass.com.
God bless you guys. Where can people go to support your work, or like financially, if that's what people want to do?
I appreciate that, and thanks for asking, because I know you're raising support as well. So people can go to latinmass.com/give. So it's our current old website. We haven't built the new website yet, but you go to latinmass.com/give. You can see the website we're building, watch the video, and then you can give. Without regular monthly support, this mission, this big mission won't happen. So we're asking for regular monthly contributors, but definitely welcome one-time gifts as well. So it's latinmass.com/give. And you can get some perks in return.
Awesome. That's perks are great. Perquisites. Thank you so much, Cameron. Everyone out there, thanks for watching today. I hope this was helpful to you. I'm excited for Mass of the Ages 3 to come out, and I'm excited sincerely for the work that you guys are doing extracurricular to just making the films. Now, people out there, if you want to support this channel, the first thing you can do is to subscribe to the channel, please. Even if you don't leave your comment, I like cookies or whatever, just like and subscribe this video and the channel respectively, because we're trying to get to 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That would really help us immensely. Also, if you want to financially support, go to Timothy J. Gordon at Patreon. We need that support too to keep the lights on. And of course, to support yourself and your family, get out of your blue state, get to a red state today. Go to realestateforlife.org. God bless you all. Cameron, thanks for appearing today. Give Jake my best. I will see you again soon, my friend.